Thank you. There we go. How is that? Thank you. So extra caffeinated, that's what I was getting at. There we go. So I'd like to introduce the panel here. And again, all of these folks are really busy, so really appreciate them coming and also, of course, you coming during your busy schedules as well. So we'll start, as the theme will be upstream to downstream. Ryan Sass, City of Everett Public Works Director. John McClellan, Alderwood Water and Wastewater District General Manager. Phil Williams, former City of Edmonds Public Works Director. Did I get that correct? Yep, twice. That's right. And wonderful consultant here, Chris Gonzalez from FCS, a Bowman Company. All right. So tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about the services the city provides to you in terms of water and wastewater, recent and future city projects, talk about our neighbors and how we actually work together, because the water and wastewater systems, if I can ask you to leave with one thing, it's a regional system. These both systems are not something that we provide to you by yourselves. This is really a team effort here. High-level cost allocation of our city budget, summary of our rates since about 2005, upcoming developments of our 2027 to 32 rate package, and then the list of capital projects and some other operating issues that we're going to be tackling as we work towards our next budget cycle. So a few facts. We are right in the midst of, and this is a state requirement, planning for our water and sewer system over the next 20 to 30, 50 years. And that again is for both wastewater and water. In terms of water again, are we going to have enough? How are we going to get it delivered? In terms of wastewater, can we get it downstream without it popping out of maintenance holes onto streets and rivers? And is there capacity in the wastewater treatment plants? So there's some big issues. And then you have climate change, aging infrastructure. So we have our hands full when looking at this. I'm going to tell you that our pipes are as old as 50 plus years. And that's actually somewhat young in this area. But in the next 10 to 15 years, a lot of those pipes are going to start breaking. So we really have to have a serious talk about how to get ahead of that. We have 90 miles of water main here in the city with 3 storage tanks and 4 pressure zones. And then for sewer, we have 70 miles of pipe, gravity sewer main, and 4 lift stations. And again, all in partnership with folks at this table. I'm just going to briefly go over this. This is a little bit just high level of the water supply. So upstream, I wasn't joking about that. We have Ryan and Spada Lake and all of their facilities that they'll be talking about. As you go downstream, Everett delivers water to AWWD. John is actually that's who we have a contract with. We have a contract with Alderwood Water District. We don't have one with Everett. They have their relationship, their financial relationship with them. So gets to there. And then right by, if you know where Urban City Coffee is, does everybody know where Urban City Coffee is in Mountlake Terrace? There is, if you look out, there is a little vault. That's where Alderwood water comes into Mountlake Terrace. That's the only point. So it's a very, very important place in there. And that's where we take over. And we deliver it to all of you in the city. Again, this little thing on water flowing, it's, now we have another partner. You're our partner, right? Typically, you have your water meter and your copper pipe that goes into your home, and then all of your fixtures, and then we take care of the stuff in the street. But there's often times where it's a little tricky, and we'll work with you. But there is a number of things that can fail. The large main line that's conveying water. Then there's the line that connects the main line to your meter, and then your own distribution system. So there's a lot of pipe underground that has different jurisdictions, and that we all need to kind of be considerate of. Our water operations here at the city again. So we need to meet and exceed our local and state water quality standards for health, of course. We want delivery safe and reliable. You know, we even if we have a break, we want to get you back online as soon as possible. And then we are always truly preparing for emergencies, especially those big water breaks. And then, of course, the thing we don't really want to happen, the big earthquake. But when it happens, you know, we have a plan. And that is part of, again, our annual work plan is making sure we are ready in case of that emergency. Capital program, it's all about quality design and construction management. Things cost a lot of money in public works, so we are here to make sure that you know, the costs are valid and that we're being as efficient as possible and streamlining the process. And we want to deliver, you know, high quality level of engineering too. We want to balance that because we know some of our design standards impact housing units, right? But we also want to have a quality system that's not going to break. So we always are trying to find that middle line to serve the community, but also have quality standards. And then again, planning for the future. You know, our population is going to grow. I think everybody in this room knows that one way or another. Maybe a little slower right now than we had thought, but it's going to happen. And we're here to look at and see, you know, what parts of the system need to be upgraded when that does happen, so we're not caught by surprise. Wastewater, very similar, but big thing, let's keep the sewage in the pipe, right? And sometimes that's not easy when electricity goes out and we have pumps that need to pump wastewater upstream. That's a big challenge. But our job here is to get it to our friends in Edmonds, to their treatment plant as quickly as possible. And then focus on environmental protection by making sure we're inspecting, repairing the system so there aren't breaks, right? The worst thing, you know, one of the worst things that can happen, you have a broken sewer main, you don't know about it. So all that sewage is leaching to the soil. So it's really important that we are monitoring our system and making sure it's performing well. And then capital program, very similar to water, looking at the long term. You know, we're also worried about population too, right? The more population, the more flushes. And then there's only so much capacity that we have in the wastewater facility. And as you learn, yes, we own a portion of the Edmonds wastewater treatment facility. Not so much like water, we all own our own facilities, but for wastewater, we are arm in arm with Edmonds. And now I'm going to hand it over to Ryan. Talk about Everett.
Great, thank you very much. My name again is Ryan Sass with the City of Everett, and I need to find out where he gets coffee. I need the coffee that he has. That's awesome. I wanted to thank Gary and the City of Mountlake Terrace for sponsoring the forum tonight. And so this first slide is really a schematic of what I refer to as Everett's modern system. And by that I mean our 100-year-old system. We had a smaller city-based system prior to this, but about 100 years ago we built this regional system. If you look to the kind of the right of the slide, you'll see the Spada Reservoir. That's our large reservoir at the Salton River watershed. You'll see the Lake Chaplain Reservoir where we have our water filtration plant, and then you'll see a bunch of large diameter transmission lines, the groups of lines that carry that water from our watershed in the Cascades to our reservoir system in Everett. Each of those transmission lines end in terminal reservoirs to catch that water and collect it and then distribute it. Everett's regional water system provides water for about a little over 3/4 of the population of Snohomish County, or about 670,000 residents.
Excellent.
Yeah. This is the utility runs on a cost recovery model, meaning that there's a cost to provide service and we recover those costs through rates. So cost has pressure on rates, and those rates and costs are generally driven by capital project investments and by regulatory requirements. This Mortenson Construction Cost Index that you see there is a construction inflation model that represents the cost for non-residential construction, the type of construction that we all do. and it's a good tool for measuring inflation. And what's important about this slide is that we've transitioned from a time of historically low inflation to the return of inflation coming out of COVID. And if you look at the box that's highlighted there, we had 26% increase in construction costs in 1 year over 2021. And the time from the end of 2020 to the end of 24, we're at 39% increase. I don't have 2025 yet on this box, but if I did, that's another 5%. So the change from historically low inflation to an inflationary environment has a real big impact on our capital programs. So getting to our, let's see, I've got, no, you're good. I've just got a different order, so. Okay, so we've got capital projects that we need to deliver to maintain service, and these are, I'm going to highlight a couple because one of the things Gary asked me for was what do we got going in the next 3 to 5 years that will affect you guys and your rates indirectly. And so we've got 2 major projects, and these are what I call generational projects, in that these are projects replacing, the Reservoir 3 project is replacing a 100-year-old reservoir, and we've, a lot of our system was built 100 years ago, and so these are not costs that can be avoided, they're things we must do. The other significant project is an upgrade and updates at our water filtration plant. Our water filtration plant produces about 50 million gallons a day on an average day and provides water for all those 670,000. Got to have a gratuitous construction photo there. So the next slide, the other project is our Reservoir 3 replacement project. This is a 100-year-old facility built in 1923, 24. We got every ounce of life we could get out of this thing. We tried to even extend it a few more years, but we had to do some emergency replacements to the roof to keep it from falling in, just to keep it going. So it's in construction now. It'll be built in 2 phases. The first phase is currently under construction, and the second phase will follow in a couple of years down the road. Again, got to have a construction photo in here. This is phase 1 that's being built right now. It's a pre-stressed concrete cylinder tank for those that might be interested. This is the Reservoir 3 site, and what I'll draw attention to there are just the 2 phases. The blue tank is the one you just saw a picture of that's being built. Its size is smaller than the other half because it's a very tight site. On the same site, Alderwood has a couple of their pump stations and lots of transmission lines, and so it was about the biggest initial project we could shoehorn in there. And then on the right side, you'll see kind of the pink or gray, and that's the existing rectangular open reservoir that's being replaced, and so we have to demolish that to build phase 2. And it's built in phases so it can operate continuously. So that's a representation of our urgent aging infrastructure projects. And if I draw your attention to the photo in the middle there, that is a picture of Reservoir 3 being built in 1923 and 1924. And you can see it was graded with a horse-drawn grade plane, and so, yeah, we got our life out of it. So if you don't take anything else away, just remember that photo. That's my favorite photo that I've got. And lastly, this is a representation of our capital program over the next 4 years, and because of these large generational projects and similar ones on the sewer side that I'm not talking about because our sewer program doesn't affect you down here, but we've got generational type replacements, and so one of the things that we've done to try to mitigate the pressure on cost and rates is we've deferred a lot of our more routine capital. And so what this slide shows is the dark blue line is what our capital program would look like if we did everything we had planned along with these larger projects. The light blue line is the larger projects and about half of everything else being deferred until beyond 2028. And so that's one way that we're doing things that we will ultimately have to do, but we're deferring some of that down the road to reduce the cost pressure going forward.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, John.
Thanks, Gary. Well, I don't have construction photos, and I don't have as many slides as Ryan, so this might go a little quicker. So that's an overview of Alderwood's system. And that's really just showing the pipelines, the water pipelines that serve our wholesale system. And we have 5 wholesale partners we serve. Mountlake Terrace is one of them. Also Edmonds, City of Linwood, the McClellan Water and Wastewater District, and Silver Lake Water and Sewer District. So we have 5 wholesale customers that connect to that system. And they're served off of our connection to Everett's Reservoir 3 that Ryan had a photo of earlier, where they're doing the Reservoir 3 project, where we have 2 pump stations. That's the beginning of Alderwood's system. In addition, we have a connection to the transmission number 5 line, where we have the beginning of the Clearview Water Supply Agency, which is an agreement between Alderwood, Cross Valley Water District, and Silver Lake. And so that's a second way where we're serving a regional group of customers throughout southwest Snohomish County. So of all the water that Everett produces up at their treatment plant and pumps down their pipes, Alderwood takes probably a little over half of that. And we serve a population of a little bit of over 300,000 people in all those different areas and cities in unincorporated Snohomish County as well. We also serve retail water services to the City of Mill Creek and the City of Bothell on the Snohomish side of the boundary, as well as other places, Briar included. We have system-wide nearly 57,000 water connections, and we have nearly 700 miles of water mains and nearly 500 miles of sewer mains. That's different because we're a special purpose district, and Alderwood's the largest special purpose district in the state. We have an area of about 44 square miles that we serve. Most special purpose districts are a good bit smaller. And so we're a little bit different because of our size and our complexity and the nature of how many different wholesale relationships we have, upstream and downstream. So if we go to the next slide, Gary, that's just a close-up of the part of our system that ultimately serves Mountlake Terrace, as well as Briar and Bothell and Linwood. So the system is constantly growing. I think some of you who live in this area realize this is one of the fastest growing areas in the state. And so we've seen on the order of 10 to 20 miles of new water and sewer mains installed in our district every year for literally decades. That's how fast our area is growing. And so we're seeing more people move in, we're seeing an increase in connections, we're seeing an increase in density. So there's this constant growing of the system, which leads to an increased demand on the resources on the water as well as sewer services. We have a contract for water supply with the City of Everett, and we have similar contracts with our wholesale customers that define what that costs and how rates are determined. There's a little bit difference from one to the other, but in general, the contracts we have with our wholesale partners are largely the same. And we have a number of reservoirs, steel reservoirs throughout our system, and they comprise about 90 million gallons. So we're well positioned to serve that growth well into the future. And with that, I believe I will hand it back to you, Gary.
Thank you, John. All right, let's turn a little bit to our other utility here, wastewater. And Phil Williams.
Thank you, and good evening, and thanks for coming. I appreciate your interest. Edmonds' role here in any impacts that we might have on Mountlake Terrace are strictly related to the wastewater treatment services that Edmonds provides to this area. We serve all of Mountlake Terrace, a good chunk of shoreline that used to be the Ronald Wastewater District, and then the Olympic Water and Wastewater District also. So we have those 3 partners, plus almost all of Edmonds. A chunk of it actually goes to Linwood at their plant, as well. But it's a regional facility, has currently a rated capacity of 11.8 million gallons a day, and my phone is ringing, and we're going to stop that. Sorry about that. Hopefully it won't come back. I'll bury it. And that plant, I mean, the first plant was built in Edmonds in like 1956, 57. It was a primary plant like most. Terrible. All of the rest of the stuff went right out into Puget Sound. It became a secondary plant in the early 1990s, and it's pretty much stayed there, almost in that form, for all that time, a good 33 years. In fact, the original piece of equipment that we used to manage the solids that are produced by wastewater treatment, we just tore out and put in a new facility that I do want to talk about. I'd like to mention three things. One, just the ongoing inexorable decline in the quality of your equipment and the maintenance required to take care of it, and it all eventually has to be replaced. And everybody here faces that. This area grew up in the 50s, and a lot of that stuff that was built back then has lasted all that time, but we're getting into a bow wave now of infrastructure replacement and upgrading that needs to happen. Some of it for regulatory reasons, and some of it just because the stuff is old, tired, and out of capacity. And we all face that. So that's one big issue I won't go into detail on, but the two other things that I want to talk about is the biosolids treatment at the City of Edmonds right now, which is, we made a big move in 2018 when we made a decision to get out of the incineration business. First of all, it was intensely unpopular with the U.S. EPA. They've been trying to put incinerators out of business for quite some time. We felt that. Plus, it was getting old and tired and needed to be replaced with something. So we were looking around for something better, something that was more environmentally responsible, energy efficient, and hopefully lower in maintenance and lower in costs. We looked at the available technologies. I won't go through the whole list. And finally picked out something out of California that made a biochar product. And we studied that for a couple of years thinking this might just be exactly what we needed. And at the end, though, ultimately decided, no, that wasn't the right answer for us. It would have required a whole lot of other things at the plant to be replaced just to be compatible with it. And so there was a new technology that came on the scene at about that time from a company called Eco Remedy, and it's called gasification. So you take the biosolids and you run them through a dryer, get them very dry, and put it in this gasifier. I won't go into the mechanics on that, but it just takes the organic matter, heats it up, produces a gas, and you actually burn the gas, not the solids. So there's no flame, there's no incineration. So you get out of those new rules on incinerators, and it looked like just the right thing. And we worked with our state partner, the Department of Enterprise Systems, and they run the state's ESCO program. ESCO is Energy Savings Contracting. And if you can qualify as an ESCO project, you get some terrific benefits. They will guarantee you a maximum cost for the project. They'll guarantee the energy savings, and they'll guarantee the performance of the equipment. So that's the way we went. And the facility was built. I was the public works director there for about 11 and a half years, and I left, and they were just getting ready to start construction. I was gone pretty much throughout construction, and then I came back in August of last year when we're still trying to make it run the way it was intended to run. And we've had some challenges with that we're working on still with Amoresco, who was the company the state hired to build it and made those guarantees, and then the technology provider, Eco Remedy. So those are sort of the four entities that are involved in solving these issues. I think we're making good progress right now. And the other thing it does, a big issue if you've seen it in the papers probably, PFAS, does that ring a bell with anybody? It's called poly and perfluoroalkyl substances, and they're kind of nasty, toxic things that are a part of the wastewater business, and they're in the biosolids. And most of the current technologies that are implemented to manage biosolids do not get rid of them. So if you're land applying that, it could build up in the soil and be an issue. This gasification technology rids the biosolids of even PFAS chemicals, which are called those forever chemicals. Well, they're not forever, it turns out, if you expose them to about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which gasification does. So those were some positive features of it, and we're just trying to nail down the getting it to work well with our plant. The two have to be integrated, the wastewater side and the solids management side. There's been some challenges to that. Like I said, we're working through those. But that's been an expensive project. That's the face plate value of that contract was over $26 million. And we've also been having to haul biosolids to a landfill in Oregon while we have done the construction and are trying to get the plant fully commissioned. So it's a very expensive project. It does affect our rates just like it will the rates from our partners, Mountlake Terrace, Olympic View, and Shoreline now. That's one thing I will just mention. If you have questions, we can answer those. The other one is it's an upcoming problem, and it's a big one. It covers about 84 treatment plants surrounding the Puget Sound that we all love, and it's the removal of nitrogen. Nitrogen is the limiting nutrient in salt water, almost always. In freshwater, it's phosphorus, but in saltwater, it's nitrogen. And so with the increasing primary productivity in Puget Sound, more nutrients going in there, more treatment plants, bigger population over decades and decades, those nutrients end up in Puget Sound stimulating the growth of algae, both attached algae to the bottom and floating algae. And that stuff eventually dies and it sinks to the bottom and it degrades and it takes oxygen out of the water. So there's a lot of areas, the more shallow areas of Puget Sound that are plagued with low dissolved oxygen, which is hard on fish and other aquatic organisms. So the state's got a big push on that. They've been working on it for about 25 years to regulate the amount of nitrogen you discharge. That will affect our plant. That will increase costs. That'll have to be passed on to ratepayers too. The exact details are still kind of being hammered out. It hasn't been put into our discharge permit yet, but it will. Within the next probably 2 years, we'll be staring into the face of having to do something to remove nitrogen. It has the insidious effect also of taking up capacity in your plant. Because to remove nitrogen, you have to hang on to it longer and give the bacteria time, the right kind of bacteria that nitrify ammonia and turn it into nitrate, and then get rid of the nitrate to actually remove the nitrogen from the system. It's complex, it takes time, which means your tankage, if you don't have room, and have you ever driven by the Edmonds Wastewater Treatment Plant? It's on a postage stamp right in the middle of downtown. There is virtually no place to go laterally to add very much there. So it's going to be a challenge. It'll be an expensive challenge. I've seen costs that range from about $29 million up to maybe $100 million. And that's actually a lot of money for a town of 43,000, and you as partners would be impacted by that same problem. So that's coming. I think it's a good thing for Puget Sound. I'm a biologist by long ago background, worked on water quality issues with nitrogen and phosphorus effects, and I believe it's the right thing to do, but wow, it's incredibly expensive. So those are the three things that are plaguing all the treatment plants in Puget Sound for the most part, is biosolids management coming up for PFAS, nitrogen removal, and just aging infrastructure. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Phil. Before we get onto the next piece, I want to again thank Ryan, John, and Phil, but also let you all know that each one of them has a group that Mountlake Terrace is part of, an operating group, all three. So this really, again, is a team effort. We all have our individual things to do, but that's part of our roles here, folks up on the table here, is to be in communication with each other and work things out as we can with strategy to reduce costs for everybody while providing the highest level of service. But as you saw some of these slides, it's a complicated system, right? But we've got, all of us have great staff that know what's going on day and night. So really it's you're in good hands, but it is a challenging system. Okay, so we're going to get to the second part of the presentation here, and we're going to be focusing on water and water rates. But I'm, with this presentation, committing to coming back next year, early next year, to do about the same thing for sewer and for stormwater, because it's going to be a big budget year next year. So you'll, if you like what you see here, there'll be more of this to come for, like I said, other utilities as well. And shout out here to Chris and his staff here that have been really working very closely with myself and our deputy city manager Carolyn over the past month to get all this data together. So what you see here is the combined bi-monthly single bill, and where for all the utilities. Okay, so we're going to start off looking at water, sewer, and stormwater together, right? So this is basically what a typical single family is paying every other month for all three utilities. And we have other jurisdictions here we'll get to in a second to show you, but this is kind of a comparable analysis. We have a few cities that are nearby and then a few cities that are comparable in size, as you can see from the list. And when you look at all things together, we're right about in the middle, maybe a little bit towards on the upper end of it. But one thing to note is that these costs, water, sewer, and storm, vacillate over time, right? And this kind of get into some of the, I'm going to be talking back to what Ryan has said in a couple of things, is as you start needing to build capital projects in one area, those rates are going to go up. And other ones, you may feel like we're going to focus on, like you're going to see here, we're focusing on water, so the rates are a little higher. Sewer might, push for a little while, but every city is going through that, right? So this is a snapshot of today. If you go back 10 years, this might look a little different. 10 years forward, a little bit different. And that, not an excuse, it's just that's the reality of our business. But again, I really appreciate this one from Chris, because this shows, again, at a glance, all three typically utilities put together. And then again, our comparable jurisdictions, similar locations. We had Linwood, Edmonds, Shoreline, and Bothell. And then similar size, but not as close, Mercer Island, Bainbridge Island, Oak Harbor, and Bonnie Lake. And, when we focus just on water, and again, as a reminder, we have a base use that everyone pays. And Chris, we were talking yesterday, I think that's $50 out of a $150 monthly bill is a base rate. Just that's what you pay every 2 months just to be hooked up. From there, it's by usage. So what this graph is showing is on the bottom, the volume of water uses. As you use more, your bill, of course, will go up. And when we look at just all these jurisdictions compared to just water usage, so forget about the base rate, just about how you're using water, we're towards the higher end. Mercer Island with being the highest, and Bonnie Lake being the lowest. And again, the ranking's going to hold the same here on these graphs, as you'll see, second highest under Mercer Island. But this gets into the changing circumstances at times. This one, Chris pointed this out. I want to look at these three on the lower end here. Oak Harbor, they had to mitigate for a very high sewer rate. So they're really not doing a lot in water right now. And we want to talk to them. They're probably a little concerned about that, of higher breaks potentially. But, they were doing what Chris showed, is looking at all their utilities and, hey, we can't do everything at once. Also, 10% of their annual income comes from the Navy. So that's why, they've got a pretty high user. So that's why a little bit why their water would be lower. Bainbridge, while they're low right now, they just have adopted a 26% annual rate increase for the next 3 years. So 26, 26, 26. Why? Major reservoir project, right? To look into the future. So if we look, well, we'll probably show this again next year, and they're not going to be at the bottom anymore, right? So things can flip on a switch, but with good reason, right? Let's remember all these costs, Ryan, again, I think you mentioned that we are a cost of service business. We are not making profit. Our goal is to be as efficient as possible, but we are not making profit. This is what it costs to provide, right? And then Bonnie Lake, similar to, I see some friends here that I used to work with at Redmond, a similar situation. They collect 60% of their rates from outside customers. And well, what does that mean? They put a surcharge, rightfully so, they could do it, it's legal, of 50%. So Redmond also had that opportunity to do that, of serving customers outside their service area. So it basically subsidizes the folks inside the city limits. Again, all legal, just a little bit different, right? Okay, and we're going to, again, this will be shared, afterwards, and I can, we talked about, there's a lot of information on here, so I'm going to go through it relatively fast, but the form's going to be the same here with Mercer Highland on the top and Linwood on the bottom. But we're looking at customer base here. So what do we have? Single family, multifamily, non-residential, and irrigation. The more diverse your customer base, the more you can choose to push some costs to one of those partners. Again, what you can't change is how much it costs. But what all cities and agencies have the option to do is, do they want to charge irrigation customers a little bit higher to subsidize for the other ones? Do they want to charge single family a little bit higher to subsidize for commercial? Those are things you can do. You have to be transparent about it. But that's where what some options are. And again, what you notice on some of the lower one, like Linwood, has a very equal, almost a third on theirs. We're pretty similar to Bothell and Oak Harbor, where we're primary single family, and then multifamily next, and then non-residential or commercial. So those are, again, how much of the revenues come from each one of those. So again, that's something we can look at that, and if we were to feel that one class is being treated a little bit too harshly, we could potentially move that around. So that's something we have in our playbook to look at. Okay, this is an interesting one. We talked about fixed versus variable costs of those graphs, where the CFS increase, that's the variable cost. So the more water you use, the rates go up, right? So we're pretty low in our fixed charge, right? That again, if you go back to the single family home, $50 out of your $150, that's fixed. What you see in the other areas there are most of the utilities charge a little bit higher fixed rate. So Chris, can I ask you to jump in here? I know we talked about this yesterday, but what does that difference mean when other utilities have a higher base rate than us? How does that impact our customers compared to them?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the rate structure decision affects what bills look like at certain levels. And so when we think about like a typical single family home, the graph that Gary shared before, we focused on a typical home using 700 cubic feet of water per month. And that 1 CCF, it equates to about 750 gallons roughly. And so those who have sort of higher volume charges, the bills might be lower at the low end, and then they go up at a quicker rate as you use more water. And likewise, the opposite is true. So if you have a higher fixed charge, your revenues are more stable, but it also means that customers at the low end end up paying more. And so there's not a right answer. I think something to keep in mind is that the utilities costs are mostly fixed, like 85, 90+% are fixed. But the utility has this objective of promoting conservation and wanting to make sure that we're using water wisely. We're not having to make expensive investments in getting additional supply, and just making good use of what we already have. There are also rate structure features that can impact the bill comparison. And so, for example, you'll see in the chart here, there are some jurisdictions like Edmonds, Oak Harbor, Bainbridge Island, and Linwood that they charge a fixed rate to multifamily customers like apartment buildings based on the number of dwelling units. And so the City of Mountlake Terrace, like some of the other ones in the group, they charge those customers based on the size of their meter. So, you know, a 1-inch meter pays this much, a 2-inch meter pays this much, but it doesn't depend on the number of dwelling units. And so what you end up with is in those other cases, multifamily customers, the apartments, they pay a greater share, and that allows single-family rates to be lower. And I should also say we use the word subsidy. It's not a super popular word, but ultimately there is industry methodology. How do you allocate costs? And there is discretion, and there are different ways you can do things that are within logical and defensible bounds. Decisions you can make, like, for example, fire suppression. How do you estimate that cost, and how do you allocate that cost? And so there's lots of room for professional judgment as you allocate those costs.
Thanks, Chris. And that's why we were kind of opening up the hood here to kind of show you what tools we do have when we do look at end rates. Okay, another meaningful difference here between our jurisdictions, our source of supply. And again, you've met our suppliers here. But if you look at Bainbridge and Bonnie Lake, and again, I'm going to refer to Redmond, again, where I used to work, they have their own wells. And that's a nice cost point. And that's actually one thing we are looking at in our comp plan process to make sure that we don't have any old wells that maybe we don't know about that we could, get running. Maybe, I don't think there is, but it's worth a search. And then you look again at some other higher cost. SPU, the folks that they provide are a little bit higher than AWWD and Everett. So again, this is another factor where, it's not always apples to apples. It's where you get your water, what type of water. Okay, and this is one where we're a little higher than others on here. Remember, our three biggest revenues for the general fund are utility taxes, properties tax, and sales tax. So here, as you notice, we're a little bit higher along with Edmonds and Bonnie Lake. Others are at a lower end, about 5%. So this will be one of our, drivers, when we look at all of the costs that influence the monthly bills, this would be one of them. Maintenance and operation. Again, we're right in kind of the middle of the pack here, but this is really all of the costs that are rolled up that are non-capital, right? We talked a lot about capital projects today. These are the costs that pay for our staff, pay for our repairs, just to keep things running every day, and emergencies included. And then staffing. So the last one was staff operational costs, but not staffing. So this is the staffing cost, and looks like again we're kind of right in the middle here. Chris broke this out a couple different ways. One was the annual labor cost. If you see in the columns there how much the actual cost is, and then the number of full-time staff per 1,000 connections. And that varies from a high of 2.57 with Bainbridge down to, it looks like, 0.84. So again, differences, I'm not going to say that others are super more efficient and others are not. There could be complexities in the system. So this is something, again, need to look at, but it does show you, it does vary. And then capital funding, right? So this is the annual water debt service as compared to our annual water rate revenues. And just what, of course, jumps out at you is Bainbridge Island again. And why? Because of that really big capital, the bond that they will need to have to take out. And then, most of us are in the 13, 14, 15% range. And Chris, can you remind me again why Mercer and Oak Harbor are so low at 1%?
So there are actually a couple things that could be going on, and I would say for one thing, a low level of debt could suggest that the utility is funding a lot of things from cash, like raising money through rates to fund the projects, and that may be what's happening with Mercer Island. The other option is they might be deferring capital investment, kind of like we said before for Oak Harbor, and that might be, why do Mercer Island and Oak Harbor occupy two different spots, on the relative ranking, despite both having similarly low levels of debt.
Great, thank you. That's, again, so we're opening up the hood again for everybody here, but again, that's why you do have to dig into the numbers a little bit because it's sometimes not obvious. And then one other cost here, this is what we charge for connections to the system for development. So it's called a capacity facilities charge, and again, something that we're allowed to do. And it's I've often been told it's a way for new development to buy into the system, right? That they haven't been here for long, not part of the Mountlake Terrace community. Other businesses have been here for a very long time, paid their rates and citizens. So this is a way to buy into the system. And we can see we're kind of middle of the pack here. And what was interesting, as you notice, Linwood has a big zero there, which is again another approach that they had. And Chris and I were talking about this. And the idea was that they thought that it would potentially spur development. But I don't think it had that effect that they were hoping to. So I think they're bringing back that credit. But again, this is one of the tools, and there's some flexibility in how any city approaches this. Okay, so the last part here, we're going to just look at a little bit about, it kind of gives you a flavor of why your rates, what your water rates are, why they're that. This kind of shows what we expected to happen from 2019 to 24 and what really happened. So this is again for we got rates, cash, annual debt, capital spending, and your bill. Let's start with your bill. We projected that your bill would be for a single family home about 140, and we're actually at about 120, right? So that's good news, but that means we didn't do some things we wanted to do. And if you go to the line above, that's pretty much the reason. We had expected to spend $29 million in capital, and we've spent $6 million. While you can say, oh, great cost savings, no, that's not necessarily a good thing. That $29 million needs to happen. We need to do those projects. COVID, staffing, there's a large turnover. We have a lot of new faces at the city. One of the reasons I was brought here is I'm an expert in capital delivery, so we're hopefully going to turn this around. But because we didn't spend that money, we also didn't bond, right? So that's why ultimately your rates aren't as high as we thought they were. But again, it's good news, bad news, right? And that's what we're just trying to balance. This was what was the expectation. As you can see, those are some big numbers there. That we had for that $29 million starting in 2019 to 2024, and somewhat kind of growing a little bit. And that's again what the strategy called out for. And this just shows really all the elements we talked about before that make up your rate. You got your O&M, existing debt on existing bonds that we already took out. We had a couple projects that we're paying off, new debt available for capital, and then what our revenue path would have been, which would have been a little bit higher. So what really happened, right? So we spent $6 million from 2014, 2020.7 less. Again, the key, that 2022.7 in need did not go away, right? It's more of what we really did is because we weren't able to tackle those projects, we have a little higher risk in the system for potential water breaks or contamination, but we still, those are still on our projects. We did refund our existing bonds in 2020. And then on the really good news, this is great stuff, that we did get a $7.6 million loan, not grant, but loan, that needs to be paid back from the State Public Works Fund. And I think the rate it's like 1.2% or something very low. So again, we're always looking to get loans to help defer some of those costs. And again, this is what really happened. Had just a gradual increase in revenue. And as you can see, we actually went down in revenues in 2024 because we decided to not have a rate increase. because again, we weren't ready to complete those projects and the staffing level. So we really, if you just think back to Ryan's graph, where at the actual, what you'd like to do, which is way up there, what basically we did is we're deferring. So again, those projects don't go away, but we're going to get to them as we need to. Okay, so kind of sum things up here on this part of it. The factors where, if you're wondering why is my, at this point in time, Mountlake Terrace towards the higher end for the water of the band. Well, we purchase water from, it's not our own source. We have non-supply operating costs that we have to work with. We have debt payments, and then our utility rate, which goes to the general fund, is a little bit higher. So other factors that did not really appear to explain the difference are customer base distribution, our staffing costs, rate structure, the infrastructure that we have per square mile, our main replacement liability, our capital reinvestment strategy, our reserves, and then our policies. So as we go forward, then we're really going to be working on the left side here, my left side of the graph, those four, to see what tweaks can we do? How can we, still provide you with safe and reliable water and not have the rate path as high, be it towards that end of the band, right? That's what our goal is, kind of working with you. But, the biggest thing is, that we can't sacrifice is health and safety, right? And the one thing we can do, as again, Ryan has shown, the biggest way is deferring projects. So, but the problem is when you defer too long, okay, then you're going to get that main break in the middle of the night, and it's going to be a large main, and you're going to be out of water for 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. We do not want that to happen. We do not want to boil the water to happen. So that's the balance we're trying to get. So with each project we're looking at, we are going to have to ask that high question. How do we need to do this, like you asked, right now? Do we have to? What is going to happen if we don't, right? So those are every capital project. And here we go. We have 10 that are ready, that are on our hot list. That some of these have been deferred, some of them are ongoing. I won't get into each one of those, but there's, these would be our, quote unquote, our top 10, and there's some big prices on here, right? So when we look at our rate path from 2027 to 32, because we're living with our means for next year, or it's not going to be any rate increase, this is what we're going to have to discuss. We're going to have to, and what I'm going to guarantee we're going to come back to is different rate paths. And I really like what you did, Ryan, is like, if we did all of these in 6 years, what would that look like? If we only did the top 2, what would that look like? And what would be the risks? So we really want to, again, keep opening up the hood, showing you what we're working with, and having an honest conversation. Same thing on sewer. We have our 10 projects that we're, our highest priority level, and we're going to be doing the same exact thing. A little bit different though, when we show the graphs on sewer, we're at the bottom, right? We're at the low end. Why? Because we have deferred a lot, and there are a lot of these projects, keep me up at night, right? I'm worried that we haven't done some of these in a while. I'll be honest with you, right? So, but that's one of the reasons, again, why our sewer rates right now, real time, are lower than others, because we really haven't had that investment. Operational, yes, we've got good staff, we've got great staff, we do training, all that sort of stuff, but we haven't tackled some tough issues. And again, this is, what we're going to do. And these last 2 graphs, are, as of today, as we work forward the next 3 or 4 months, we do a lot of sophisticated computer modeling in the background to look how our system's performing. So these 10 projects might change a little bit, again, based on some of the work that our partners are doing too. Some of these may not be necessary, some of them might be more important. So it is a fluid list. And with that, open up for questions, and thank you again for being here, and those online. And again, thank you for all the panel for being here. I really appreciate it. Please.
I live in Mountlake Terrace. My husband and I, and our bill every other month. Can I give you a microphone so people online can hear you? very few plants. We live low.
Yeah.
$300 is insane for 2 retired people. And why don't we come up with a program of maybe if you use less water or during this period of time, you can get a discount. I have family that live in Arizona. Do you know how much they pay a month for their water? And we all know Arizona has a water problem. $63 a month.
No.
That's it. Come on, that's crazy. Why don't we have rain barrels? There are many things that we could do. We just need to think out of the box. And I get that your list, that it all needs to be done. I've lived in Mountlake Terrace my whole life. I know how old it is, but we also have a lot of new construction. And that should be adding to those coffers of the water that they are using.
Yes.
But $300 is insane. And we don't use water.
Right.
But, you know, I get that we got things to do. It's a Christmas list. It's just like people who
Right.
say they want to live in the city of Seattle, but they can't afford it. Then guess what? You don't live there. It's how it goes. But it's crazy. I know we have to have these projects done, but it can't be on the backs of the community all the time. People need to start working within their budget like the rest of us have to do. You know, food's expensive, gas is expensive. It's killing everybody. You go on 48th and you see the line for the food place. It's all the way past the park. It's almost all the way to 48th. And I walk that road every day, and I know when it's good and I know when it's bad. And right now, it's really bad. When you go to the grocery store and a steak's on sale for $11.99, and there's nothing cheaper in the thing but $20.
Yeah.
Come on. It's crazy. I know we have to have that done, but it's also like a wish list or a Christmas list. We don't get everything we want. And that's how I look at it, and that's my biggest complaint.
I would like to see your bill. If we could get you my email address, I'd like to take a look at that just to see. But in the second, I love where you're going, but looking outside the box, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with this comprehensive plan. Is what other things can we do? Talking about it's cost of service analysis of where can we move things around, and I can guarantee you we're going to do that. And the other thing that you mentioned that I think I spoke of before, but we're absolutely going to do is show you that list, right, of what those projects are, how they drive, and it's a question for our elected officials and our city manager and myself. What risk are we comfortable with as a city, right? I mean, that's the beauty of having these projects identified, and the need is we can tell you what that risk might be, right? And have those conversations. So you'll see me back here again, and I'd love to see you at the future meetings, because this is the exact community conversation we need to have.
My other question is are we going to go to a monthly billing?
I am going to look.
Possible, because honestly, maybe that would help people who are struggling instead of getting $300 every other month. I think it's a possibility. I don't know.
I will keep talk with our finance folks about that. The bill that is actual is always less than the other one. Why is that? That I'm going to have to ask about. I don't know the answer to that.
It's usually like, well, it's not a lot, it's about $20,
Right.
but I just always like, why is it like that? I'm just curious as to why it's like that.
Okay. All right. Please see me though afterwards. I want to get your. Yes.
Hi there. My name is Tuhai, and I'm a Mountlake Terrace resident. Please, I very humbly and very gently offered this maybe perhaps different thinking. I don't know. Or maybe it's the same with different words, perhaps. First off, I would argue that Mountlake Terrace is very different from Arizona in a sense that my family that lives in Arizona, everything is plastic. They don't have to water anything. They don't have to do much of whatever. So I'm kind of careful not to take an apple and try to compare it to a persimmon, if you will. The other thing too is, and I respect that many people here have lived in Mountlake Terrace much longer than I have. I'm simply someone who's lived in Western Washington since 1975, but as far as Mountlake Terrace is concerned, I've only been here 15 years. So that's just a very small matter of time. Compared to a lot of you old timers and I'm not saying that you're old, but you've been here forever. compared to me. If I could offer this, please. I understand that there is a lot of people very unhappy and very frustrated. I hear all kinds of conversations, standing at the QFC, dumping stuff at the landfill, wherever at the park I might walk the dog, right? There's a lot of people really angry, but all those angry people, and this is why I commend people that are here, come here and look at that and educate yourself on that, right? But also understand that, as you have attempted to illustrate, we are not alone. There's all kinds of places and peoples and things who are in the same boat, if not worse than us. And then I invite you to think about this. I know that this is not a third world country, okay? But when you come from somewhere else where there's very little anything, and you come to the United States, it's amazing, right? Okay, so think of this. And I'm not suggesting that if you don't like Mountlake Terrace, go somewhere else. That's not what I'm saying. But think of it in this way. There's so many problems in this world. We are not the beginning, the people that instigated the problem, okay? We, the people in this room, did not create these problems, right? But whatever we were in the past helps to understand where we are now, correct? A little bit, right? So think of it this way. If you came from a third world country and you were given a gallon of water and said, hey, Morgan Smith, pretend that's your name in Thailand, okay? Okay. Morgan Smith, this is your gallon of water. You can choose to either drink it, bathe with it, or cook with it. Choose. So you have that to think about too. That is perspective, right? Yeah. And so there's so many I'm sorry, I'm just a communication economics major. I'm not a water civil engineer, and I'm not a chemistry person. I'm not any of those great and amazing things that you math and science people are, okay? But what my understanding is that when you take water and you have all these water situations, we have to go to each little variable that can cause that particular bill. Do you have a situation in your home where you have a water leak? How old is your system set up? Is your toilet continually, as you're on vacation? Or like when we went on vacation, we had this big, there's no children in this room, right? We had this big ass leak in the garage, right? And then we had a big water bill, right? So there's so many reasons why, we get a big water bill. And it's just like when we used to work in the wireless industry, there's a real big ass reason why you have a big bill. So let's break it down and see what it is that's happened, right? But I very gently and I very humbly ask that perhaps all of us take time to look at all different angles of this. And while many people are pissed off about our water bills, and I'm not saying we're not. We'd be more than happy to be angry, but we're just trying to temper it a little bit, right? But I just think about the extremes of it all, and then think of what this world, there's so many things that we have to get done to become better. Yeah. And in this current climate that we have, it's very difficult to do better when there's all kinds of extra challenges that are unnecessary. But I will leave it at that. So thank you very much for your time and efforts.
Thank you.
Well, I may not speak for everybody here. I'm George Peters. I'm a resident of Mountlake Terrace. And I was born in the state and lived most of my life in the Puget Sound area. So, and I remember John Hinterberger talking about the water. I can't remember the name of the water district. But anyway, I did listen to what you said today, and I was very impressed to learn. And I know that, comparing the $60 in Arizona to the $300 here is not correct. It's apples and oranges, absolutely. And clearly, the $63 in Arizona does not cover both water, sewer, and storm sewer. And very little in the way of storm sewer, none, for that matter. And the $300 that we're paying here covers all three of those elements. And I appreciate what you've shown here today. I did have one kind of question. The one speaker mentioned rain barrels. I have heard that either they're not permitted because they really affect the groundwater situation in most cases. Is that true? What I've heard, that it's not really what people think it is and what it's cracked up to be in terms of a way of, taking water out of the system, what comes down from the heavens and covers the earth. Is that true?
Every jurisdiction is a little different. I don't believe we have that restriction here. Steve, I'm looking at you. I think in the state we allow that. I know there was an issue in Seattle where it was actually considered to be a taking of a water right, but I think we've worked that out. The issues with rain barrels, typically they're put in for the storm, to reduce the storm impact. And there's such little volume, so it's great. I mean, I'm all for using as much rainwater as you can for your yard, or we didn't talk about. There's also gray water reuse, black water reuse, and those are things we want to look at. But when we talk about rain barrels, that's more for your storm system and reducing. You could use that for irrigation though too. So that's one way it does come into play for the water system. Is that if you are to collect enough. I mean, there's some folks in this region I know that have 10,000 gallon storage tanks under their driveway, and yeah, they use it all for landscaping. However, they need a pump, right? So then you get into electricity costs there. So, for us, and that's, I think first person to talk mentioned innovation here, just thinking outside of the box. That will be part of both the sewer and water comp plans. I guarantee you. What would happen if we're more aggressive with rain barrels, with gray water reuse, with black water reuse? What about on-site wastewater treatment for buildings, right? San Francisco is actually doing something like that where, because they don't have capacity in their wastewater system, so they have 75, I believe, apartment complexes or buildings that treat their own wastewater, and someone comes in and picks up their solids once a week. So there's some innovative stuff going down here that, can we do that? Is it going to drive down costs? I don't know, but you know what? We need to look at it. So I appreciate that idea. So I want to, if anybody's out there, yes, rain barrels are great, but it needs to be the right tool for the job. So what are you trying to accomplish with it? Thank you for the question.
I'm at the church at 4700 228th that has the large food bank operation. Just down the block from us, they're about ready to start on a project of cottage homes and supposed to begin fairly soon now, clearing the lot, which is currently a single-family dwelling. Will there be some impact in service for that food bank and church, or the residents along 228th there on the south side of the street? I don't know is an okay answer.
Impact of service of water service?
Yeah, I'm assuming they've already, I've been to a community meeting where they're talking about converting the power to underground. And I'm assuming that from a single family dwelling to 13 cottage homes, there's going to be some expansion and all that. I'm just wondering if there might be systematic interruptions in service.
No, there shouldn't be, because this, if I'm thinking of it correctly, we can talk maybe more offline, but anytime a new development comes in, the first thing is, what we look at, this is why we do sophisticated modeling. How is your and I think all of us do this here, how is your project going to impact water supply and sewer? And if there's going to be a problem, you're not going to be able to develop. You're going to need to we're going to need to do something in the system, because the key issue is fire flow, right? That's really what we're looking at. And so basically, I don't know if I know my staff reviewed this, but I didn't review it. But the project you're talking about would have met our requirements and will not have an effect on the water system. Definitely not. Maybe during construction, right, there might be something, but that they might have to turn off, a valve or something for construction, but that would be very, very temporary. Long term, no, not a problem. Oh, okay, yeah. And there would be, if there is a water shut off for whatever reason that they need to make like a connection to a pipe, yeah, we're all over that. We do that a week ahead. So thank you for thinking of them.
me, it's a new kind of fancy term for tiny houses. Well, and these are fixed, they're not sitting on trailer frames, they're sitting on lots. But the plan is, this is a fairly large lot, even though there's just a single residence there now. But the plan is for, I believe it's 13 homes. And they're now, at the last meeting, they're talking about beginning that project in the next couple of months, which would start with clearing the property and demolishing the buildings.
So does anybody know the answer to my question? If I were to Google cottage homes, is that the image that I would see?
Yeah, there's basically it's very small single-family homes that share a plot of land and have common areas. And if you're interested in the developments that are going on in the city, we have on our, if you just Google MLT maps, there's a development map on that page, and you can see all the different developments in the works. We have a couple questions from online, and then we can come back to the audience. One is folks who either live in an apartment building or a building that has an HOA, and they pay, their utilities are included in their bill, like their rent or their HOA bill. How could they become eligible for our low-income discount program? Because essentially they likely have one meter. So I'm guessing that's the case. So have we thought about that, and are there ways to overcome that?
Yeah, I had not thought about that. Chris, do you have an answer for that?
I do. So there are a growing number of communities that are offering a rebate program. So if you are a tenant that meets whatever low-income criteria are specified, you could apply to the city like once a year, basically, and you'd get there'd be a defined amount, like maybe it's just the base charge that would get waived or discounted, and you would just get one check a year, but it would go directly to the tenant rather than trying to go through like a landlord or anything like that.
We have another question online. How does billing and fees compare between a 4-person family in a multiplex or apartment to a 1-person residence flat fee for water sewer? The flat fees portion of my bill is nearly always considerably higher than by usage fees.
Does that make sense to you?
I might need to hear that one again.
How does billing or fees compare between a 4-person family in a multiplex or apartment? How does that compare to a 1-person resident? The flat fees portion of my bill is nearly always considerably higher than my usage fees. I think my usage fees. There may be some typos.
Yeah, it would be different, and the base fee would depend on what the size of the water meter is. I would say, based on the typical meter equivalency ratios, if it was like a 1-inch meter, it might be 2.5 times the sort of standard 3/4-inch rate. And as the meter size goes up, so does the base charge.
Yeah, and that's one thing, it's a great question in a way, the more I'm still processing it, but it gets back to the point of how any city chooses to structure their rates, right? Because in this case, right, if you just use a drop of water as a single-family resident, you're still paying the base rate, right? So again, other cities could have it that you have a very low base rate, so this person, right? So I think I don't know. The situation they're facing seems correct given what we have, that they're not using a lot of water. So that would make sense to me, that given our price point of basically $50 out of 150 being base, that would make sense. And the only way that would change would be if we were to decide to have a lower base rate. So it's a great question.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us online. I believe I scheduled our Zoom to end at 7:15, so our online portion may end. And in that case, thanks to everyone who joined us virtually.
Oh, actually, staffing, so I'm concerned about the future. At this point, right now for us, and John and maybe Ryan just chime in on this, but right now we're rocking it. This is the first, we were down staff when I joined and we're actually at full capacity. But a lot of that is because of word of mouth. But how about Everett and AWWD? Because I'm concerned in the future. I don't think enough people are going into trades, right? And that's one of my jobs as public works director is to get out there with our crews and tell them how great of a career you can have and raise a family and do good things being a crew member at Mountlake Terrace.
I think our answers are all going to be pretty much the same. We have the same challenges. Right now, we've got a great group of people, but industry-wide in the water industry, probably about 1 in 3 people are eligible for retirement. So the workforce is aging. So we are sneaking up on a wave of retirements that we're really not prepared to deal with. I think, like Gary said, we're really hoping to get the pipeline full of folks who want to enter into the trades in these really good jobs. So crossing our fingers.
So the delay in some of those projects, is that because of that, or is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was due to the other side of the house, engineering. Yeah, so our engineering, and again, I wasn't here at the time, but there was a vacuum that I don't know if it was salaries or whatever, but they went elsewhere. So we didn't have enough staff to do the design and construction. So that's what I meant by that.
Okay, but that's been remedied, or?
Yes, that has. Happy engineers. But Ryan, did you have?
Yeah, it's similar for us in that long-term, we have concern about the pipeline of available workers that are available and interested in doing the noble and important work that Public Works does. In the near term, we're doing pretty good right now, and we're affected by the economic cycle, and that during boom times, we're competing more with the private sector. It's more difficult in terms of recruiting. And then when the economy slacks off a little bit, then we tend to compete better.
We're over our time. You're welcome to stay and chat with our panelists afterwards. And we have beverages. Please help yourself. We also have a voluntary demographic sign-in sheet on this back table. Thank you so much for coming.
Just ask you one last quick question, please. We live in a 53-unit townhouse development. It's built on a gigantic rain garden, quote unquote. There's 3 or 4 retention ponds, okay, for extra water. Was that built to actually help the ecological essence of Mountlake Terrace, or was it just built so they could charge us more money when they sold the CT?
I would have the specifics, but I believe those were stormwater retention ponds that were required for the development. So what the major change that has taken over the last decades is managing your stormwater when you develop. So part of that is on-site control. So both to reduce downstream flooding impacts and to improve water quality. So developments above a certain size are required to put in some type of BMPs, best management practices, to, again, two big things: reduce flooding impacts. So, the flooding or, scour to, that's going to, degrade ecosystem, but also to clean up the pollutants from your site, from the cars, from the roof, from pesticides, whatever, that they're able to treat that. So those are required by the developer, and yes, where do those costs go? They need to get those costs back. So that's, why they're, why they're part, they're paid back through your monthly fees.
Okay, so the last essence is, can you tell me, Gary, somebody I could work with to ask them to come out and look at the system, our setup, because now it's been, 13 to 15 years since it's been there. And I don't know if we're following all the rules or whatever. I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but if we're going to have it, then let's do it right.
Well, my staff has already looked at it. I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
But,
thanks.
Yeah, we look at it as a permit. As part of our permit, we review all stormwater facilities that were constructed privately on a semi-annual basis. Sure.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you coming. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Whew, that's fun.